Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating look at the actual mechanics of grammar. But we're going to do something a bit different. We are going to treat sentence construction exactly like directing a movie. Think about it. As writers, we are literally sitting in the director's chair, and we have total control over where the camera points. And depending on where we aim that lens, we completely change the focus of our narrative. That right there is the pure magic of active and passive voice. By the time we wrap up, you're going to know exactly how to direct your own sentences like a pro.
Here's our grammar operating manual roadmap for today. We're starting with shifting the camera focus, moving to the stars of the sentence, and then looking at the transformation pipeline. After that, we'll hit mastering the time lenses, check out system limits and exceptions, and finally, we'll wrap up with debugging your grammar.
All right, let's dive right into this.
Part 1. Shifting the camera focus.
Before we get bogged down in formulas and rules, we really need to establish the foundational idea behind grammatical voice. It is simply about changing perspectives. It's a real light bulb moment when you realize the underlying meaning stays exactly the same, but the metaphorical camera focus just shifts. Consider these two sentences: Ram wrote a letter, and a letter was written by Ram. Both mean the exact same thing, right? The reality hasn't changed one bit. The only difference is where we put the camera.
So to put a strict definition on it, voice is the grammatical shift in a sentence's perspective. It determines whether the doer of the action, or the receiver of the action, gets the primary spotlight. As the director, you get to make that call.
Moving on to Section 2, Stars of the Sentence. Let's meet the primary actors on our stage, the active subject and the passive object. Now, what's really interesting here is how the spotlight shines squarely on the subject in active voice. The subject is the absolute star. They're the ones actually performing the action. So in the sentence, Mohan kicked the ball, Mohan is right there in the bright yellow spotlight. He's actively doing the kicking. The structure is super straightforward. Subject, followed by the verb, followed by the object.
But watch how we can completely flip the dynamic. In passive voice, that spotlight completely moves over to the object. Suddenly, the receiver of the action is the new focal point. So now, the sentence becomes, the ball was kicked by Mohan. Mohan is technically still in the scene, but he's been pushed way back into the background. The soccer ball is our new star.
Now, stripping away the visual metaphors for just a second, let's look at the strict structural math required to actually shift that spotlight. You can't just move words around randomly. To go from active to passive, you move from the simple active formula, subject plus verb plus object, to a much more precise mathematical equation. The passive formula goes object plus a helping verb plus verb 3 plus the word by plus the subject.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the transformation pipeline.
I love this concept. Think of this as the system engine room, where we literally render an active sentence into a passive one. Just like a circuit board, our sentences go through this really mechanical, step-by-step rendering process. Your active input, like Rohan writes a letter, gets routed through 6 specific microchips to output the passive result. A letter is written by Rohan. It's brilliant.
So let's slow down for a second and walk methodically through these 6 computational steps. Step 1. Find your subject and object. Step 2. Take that object and move it to the very front. Step 3. Add the appropriate helping verb. Step 4. Convert your main verb into verb 3, that's the past participle. Step 5. Add the word by. And finally, Step 6. Move your original subject to the very end. If you execute those 6 steps, your sentence is going to render perfectly every single time.
So, the crucial point to remember here, the absolute golden rule of this entire system, is that passive voice always requires the past participle, or V3. Words like written, eaten, made, seen. Without this specific V3 component, the entire passive voice render just fails, period.
All right, Section 4, Mastering the Time Lenses.
If making the object the star is like moving the camera, then changing the tenses is exactly like swapping out the camera's lens. Let's look at Master Lens 1, present tenses. When your active sentence is happening right now, like she writes a letter, your passive rendering needs to reflect that present time. You do this by adjusting the helping verb right before our mandatory V3. So we plug in is, am, or are, making it a letter is written by her. If it's a continuous action, like he is cleaning the room, we use is being to keep that ongoing feel, giving us the room is being cleaned by him.
Let's see how this builds when we swap over to Master Lens 2, past tenses.
The underlying logic is identical, we're just swapping the helping verbs to match the past. Ravi painted the wall becomes the wall was painted by Ravi. We utilize was or were. And if the active sentence is past perfect, like she had finished the project, we just drop in had been. Boom, the project had been finished by her.
Fast forwarding a bit to Master Lens 3, future tenses. Look at how the grammatical pipeline just keeps running smoothly as long as you match those helping verbs. They will organize the event turns into the event will be organized by them. If it's future perfect, will have completed, that seamlessly renders out as will have been completed. Notice how that core V3 structure never breaks, only the helping verbs adapt to the time lens.
Okay, but what happens when you hit rigid modal words like can, could, must, or should? Well, these words don't change form, so for these, we use the modals adapter. It's an incredibly elegant workaround. You simply plug the word be right before your V3. That's it. She can solve the problem simply becomes the problem can be solved by her. You must follow the rules becomes the rules must be followed by you. Easy, right?
Section 5. System limits and exceptions.
Just a quick warning here for all you directors out there. Every operating system has system limits, and our grammar software is absolutely no different. First up is the object requirement limit. You literally cannot render a passive sentence without a direct object. Look at the phrase, the baby sleeps. There's no object receiving the action of sleeping, so if you try to shift the focus, you're going to get an error code on the dashboard. No passive form is possible because there's nothing to move into the spotlight. Here's another exception, and it's like a movie clapperboard cutting a scene. We call it the invisible doer. Sometimes the director cuts the doer from the frame entirely. If the person performing the action isn't important to the story, or we just don't know who they are, we simply omit the by plus subject completely. Instead of saying someone stole my bicycle, we just say my bicycle was stolen. We don't need to add by someone at the end. They're cut from the scene.
Finally, Section 6, debugging your grammar.
We've entered the final phase of post-production. Now it's time to troubleshoot the single most common rendering error writers make, the mismatched timeline bug. You have to remember this. Changing the camera focus, going from active to passive, never, ever changes the actual time the event happened. Voice changes focus, not time.
Let's contrast the exact structural fix side by side so you know exactly how to debug this timeline error in your own edits. If someone writes, "The work is completed by him yesterday," that is a glaring bug. Yesterday is in the past, but is completed uses a present tense helping verb. To debug this, we simply patch the helping verb to match the timeline. It should be, "The work was completed by him yesterday." Now the tense perfectly matches the past action.
And that brings us to the end. You now have the full operating manual. You know how the pipeline works, how to adapt the time lenses, and how to debug the system. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Now that you're totally empowered to experiment with sentence construction, where will you direct the spotlight in your next sentence? The director's chair is yours. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and keep exploring.